I was working a simple job on an older Florida home, repairing the front porch on a quiet weekday morning. The neighborhood was calm, filled with palm trees and the distant sound of sprinklers. But that peace didn't last long. From across the street, I suddenly heard shouting, not just raised voices, but full-blown screaming. My first thought was that maybe someone was hurt. I set down my tools and walked toward the noise. As I got closer, I saw the scene unfold. A middle-aged woman stood in her driveway, arms flailing wildly as she screamed at three men in neon safety vests. The workers weren't shouting back. They were just standing near a small hole in the grass where they were installing a new fiber line for the neighborhood's internet. The men looked uncomfortable, shuffling their feet as she kept pointing at the ground like it was some kind of crime scene. From what I gathered, she was furious about the small demarc they were installing, the little utility box that connects the fiber line to the rest of the system. The kicker? It wasn't even on her property. It was installed in the easement, just a few feet from the telephone box that had been there for decades. But in her mind, this was her yard, and no one had the right to touch it. The shouting continued, non-stop, for at least 5 minutes. The woman's face was red, her voice hoarse, and the workers were still trying to keep their cool. Then, a white pickup truck rolled up. The supervisor had arrived. He stepped out calmly, clipboard in hand, and tried to explain the situation. "This is an easement, ma'am," he said gently. "It's public utility space. The HOA doesn't control this area, and we have full legal right to install the fiber line here." But instead of calming her down, that only made her louder. She doubled down, screaming at the supervisor like he was trespassing on sacred ground. And just when I thought it couldn't escalate any further, a police cruiser turned the corner and pulled up to the curb. The officer stepped out and approached slowly, probably hoping to de-escalate. But the woman wasn't finished. She threw her shoulders back, looked the supervisor dead in the eye, and shouted, "You don't understand. I am the HOA president. I'm in charge here. Easement or not, you answer to me." Neighbors started gathering now, peeking from behind curtains, some even stepping onto porches to watch. The officer tried to interrupt, to calm her down, but before anyone could react, she slapped the supervisor across the face. The whole street froze. The workers gasped. The officer didn't hesitate. In seconds, he stepped in, pulled her hands behind her back, and cuffed her on the spot. She was still yelling, still insisting she ran the neighborhood, as the officer walked her toward the patrol car. The residents stood in stunned silence, watching their so-called leader being arrested in broad daylight for assault. The workers? They just shook their heads, quietly returned to their job, and kept laying the fiber line like nothing had happened. The supervisor, though clearly shaken, gave a half-smile to the officer as if to say, "Thank you." That day, the neighborhood learned a hard truth. Even HOA presidents aren't above the law. Easements belong to the public, not the HOA, and no amount of screaming or power trips could change that. For me, it was a front-row seat to one of the most jaw-dropping HOA meltdowns I'd ever witnessed. Proof that sometimes, karma doesn't wait. It arrives in the form of flashing police lights, handcuffs, and a hard lesson in respect.